for this chat on impact monitoring in the tourism space. We are joined today by Eleanor from Transfrontier Parks Destinations, who recently won quite an amazing global award, which I will have her talk a little bit about that when she starts her presentation. But I really want to just introduce the topic of impact monitoring from a global perspective. And at the end, I can maybe share a little bit with you as well about what fair trade tourism is doing in terms of getting involved in impact monitoring initiatives. So around the world, I mean, there's increasing demand for transparency in terms of impact. And it's kind of an interesting development that works in a complementary way with certification. Because, you know, certification is about, of course, the development and the process of getting there, but then everybody wants to know what difference does it make. So I think it's really important that we all kind of wrap our heads around how we can communicate that. So here are just a few examples for you of how that's happening in industry at the moment. So this is an example from G Adventures, which is a really big global operator, that they've developed this Ripple score tool that they calculate what is the local impact of our tours in the destination. Okay, a very, very cool and rather complicated tool, but really powerful. And they've got, you know, they're huge and they have lots of money for great design work and fun graphics. Here's another example from Explorations Africa, just talking about, it's a static impact update. So it's broadly about their impact in the destinations that they sell. So for example, they've been involved, whether it's through their CSI or, you know, side fundraising or direct investment in, you know, they're in 50 conservation projects, for example, or 15,000 seedlings were planted and grown. Okay, so these are the kind of impact metrics that they would have to update on a regular basis, but it's helpful for the travel then to know that this operator is operating transparently, and this is the difference they make with my money. Carbon impacts, of course, transparency about what's the footprint. So far and wild travel, they calculate the impact according to a score for the lodges that they work with. This is a broader impact sort of communication done by Better Places out of the Netherlands. So it's not just about carbon impact, but it's about social and economic impact as well. And they do the score per destination. So travelers who are more discerning about, you know, where am I going to travel generally, this is quite useful for them. Accommodation, a very interesting example coming from Fogo Island. They've done, they call it their economic nutrition calculation. So they look at all their ops spend and they figure out percentage-wise where it goes. So it's quite high level, but again, very transparent, and the traveler can see, you know, is 40% going to the shareholders, or is it going here or there? And yeah, so again, very interesting from, you know, businesses are often quite sensitive about sharing anything about financial information. So I find this quite interesting that they're so open to their distribution of where their money goes. Ooh. That's right. Another example, this one's affiliated with another certification program that they calculate according to the impact areas of the certification program. So conservation, community, commerce, and culture. And this is Borana Lodge that, yeah, has done a really nice graphic display of what their impact is broadly. Okay. And that's really it. I just wanted to show you that there are people doing this on a very precise level, on a, you know, there's the carbon footprint level, there's also the broader level in terms of socioeconomic impacts. So it's kind of across the board what's happening and what's considered to be a priority. And I'll share with you at the end a little bit about, like I said, what fair trade's involved in and some new developments in that space. But for now, I want to invite Eleanor to share her screen and share with us how they do this at Witsieshoek Mountain Lodge. Eleanor, if you can just tell us maybe a bit about the lodge and maybe about your wonderful recent award, and then I'll let you do what you want.
Hi, Lisa. Hi, everybody. I'm with a company called Transfrontier Parks Destinations. We are a lodge management company, a commercial lodge management company. We specialize in working with properties that are owned by rural communities in remote destinations. It means that while the principles of lodge management for somebody else remain quite similar to the model that is used throughout the world, the practice of communications with the local community take on quite a different complexity to what you would expect if you were communicating with what I would call an ordinary commercial shareholder. We operate, and I'm going to just give you a run of where we operate at the moment to give you a feeling for it. Kaus Lodge in the Kgalagadi. It is owned by the Komani San and the Meer communities. We've been working there for 15 years. Witsieshoek Mountain Lodge in the northern Drakensberg. It is basically base camp for the start of either the Grand Traverse or for hiking to the top of Tugela Waterfall, the highest waterfall in the world. It is owned by the local Baklokwa community. Then in Limpopo, there are two properties. There is Nahakwe Lodge, which is in the a triangle between Giani, Louis Trichardt, and Polokwane, that is owned by the Mamayele Kolobetono Traditional Authority. And then right up at the Pafuri Gate into Kruger is Awalani Lodge, owned by 4 beneficiary communities up there. What is common about all of these properties is that in terms of the South African development model for trying to build rural community assets, they have all had some form of state support to get their infrastructure either developed or revamped, because it was part of our state model of trying to get rural communities into the mainstream model. We, as an operator, come with no cash. We make our money out of trading. If trading doesn't work, we don't make money. It's a very simple equation. So our attempts all along have been to operate within the normal operating and reporting constraints of the way standard financial reporting is done. I looked at all the examples that Lisa was showing us now, and I must say I do hold a feeling that I need to update some of the ways in which we are presenting our information. In essence, what we have done, and I'm just trying to hide myself so I can see. Can everybody see there's an Excel spreadsheet in front of you?
Yes, we can see it, Eleanor. Thanks.
Okay. All right. What we take is we take information that comes out of our audited financial statements and we present specific components of that information. We track it over the years from when we started until now. We track the number of beds that we have, the percentage occupancy, our turnover. This number comes straight out of our audited financial statements. The profit or loss that we incurred that year, the number of employees. This number is the number of employees who were on the payroll at month end, on the month of the end of the financial year, because you've always got that, was it the average number of employees, and then you end up with this ghastly situation of 52.3 employees, and hopefully we never employ a point anything. We then also track procurement in the local area. One of our points of prioritization is that we procure locally as far as possible. We maintain an Excel spreadsheet that matches our financial systems, and when we bring a new supplier on, we work out whether this supplier sells goods primarily of local origin or primarily of local supply. Very quickly, if your mind's not there, the difference between local origin and local supply is local origin means the item was produced in the area. And the most significant component of that for us in a rural context goes with services. Those are maintenance people, etc. And then items of agricultural output that come from the local area. Local supply is a shop that might be selling goods that were manufactured elsewhere in the country, but they are being sold in the local area, so they are part of the economic value chain of the area. We then, and I just want to, as a point of anybody thinking of doing this for their own data, just to note that what we do is we assess the supplier as a whole, and we look at it and we say the majority of the stuff we buy from this guy is local origin. Very occasionally, there might be something on the till slip that wasn't local origin and was actually local supply. We don't get down to that level of exquisite granularity. We categorize the supplier. So when this data comes into our report at the year end, it is a report that spits out of our financial systems that just tallies up the total that we have spent per supplier and not per individual line item. Honestly, you're going to go mad if you try to go to the individual line item. We do every year do a quick audit and check, and I know this year we just chucked a couple of people off and moved them from origin to supply, etc. You've got to just check that you're honest about this. The next point that what we then do is we bring into the spreadsheet staff remunerations and benefits. That is a line that comes off our audited financial statements. So what you are allocating into staff benefits depends on how you put your audited financial statements together. We, in the instance of Witsieshoek Mountain Lodge, we pay a rental to the community. It is both rental and it will be in time a profit share, although we don't do that. We haven't hit that point at the moment. And then the component that is probably unique to community properties that does not come into the value generation when there is a commercial ownership of land is asset development, upgrade, maintenance, and insurance. Because if in our instance as operators, for example, we pay insurance on the actual fixed asset, even though we don't own the asset. So therefore, we deem it as part of the value that we provide to the local community. And it is a hefty flippin' sum when you have thatch. Anybody who's in the world of thatch, we're actually holding our breath at the moment because SATAB are doing a very careful reevaluation, and we're very nervous as to what they are going to do. Regional economic benefit is then, it takes data that has been previously provided and shown in a different way. Now, ultimately, the reason we collect and share this data is because very early on in our journey with communities, we found a frequent controversy of, oh, this lodge is owned by the local community, and what benefit are we actually getting out of it? Because if you look at this number, this line, the rental line, the actual hardcore cash that comes out of the whole benefits to the community is very low as a percentage of the entire economic benefit. So we have tried, we meet with the communities once a quarter, and we present this data annually at the same time as the audited financial data. We have tried over the years to build an understanding that the economic benefit of the lodge is way, way more than just the cash that is in the bank account or has moved through the bank accounts. And when you look at the graphs that we've got at the bottom, and this is the exact data that we provided that resulted in us winning the World Responsible Tourism Award, the overall award this year. If you look at the graph that has got the green and the blue in it, which goes from 2011 through to 2022, that large green value of asset development is the local benefits that were accrued during the period of revamping the lodge, where we were able to ensure that local artisans were used to do as much as possible at the lodge and a lot more than gets done traditionally in South African developments. So, for example, the furniture was made by a local cabinet maker, the curtains were sewn by local seamstresses, etc. But what you see if you look longitudinally at this data from 2011 all the way to 2022 is the real benefit ultimately is going to be in local employment. Our local employment at Witsieshoek, I think, is at 96% locals, and we have to have it up at 100%. Maybe one day that'll be there. So in the long run, the real benefits to the communities are shown how they stack up. And that red line that is hiding in the middle there is actually the cash sum. And the cash sum isn't as great as some would think that it could be. The graph on the left I used for the submission simply to show the impact of local origin procurement during a rebuild phase. We as management also use it to see that our ratios between local origin and local supply are going in the right direction. And in this instance, as I admitted in the report, it's going in the wrong direction. This is the consequence of post-COVID. We have lost a certain amount of local supply capacity in the area that we're working in with Witsieshoek, and it is a management focus of ours now going into next year to change that trend, because there isn't enough development of local origin. So we're using this, the awards are great from a marketing perspective, but ultimately that's not what's important. What's important over here is using this information both to build an understanding with the local community as to where the real value lies in their assets, but also for us at a management level to check that we are doing the right things and we are building our business in the right direction. Because if you don't, I feel quite strongly, if we don't work harder on this local origin and start giving more opportunities for local suppliers to take some of that economic pie, we're going to end up with a fight into the future. So we definitely have some work to do over here. As a group, we keep exactly the same data for all of our properties, and then I can provide this Excel spreadsheet across the group for TFPD, and the number in terms of the local economic benefit we as a group have done has just topped on R250 million. So it's in the days when things are really hard and you wonder what the hell you're doing and you wonder why you're here and why you're doing it, it's quite useful to be able to look back and go, you know what, maybe we kind of did the right thing. We're getting there. So those are the figures. Thank you very much. And I think let's go with any questions. Lisa, does that work for you?
Yeah, that's great, Eleanor. Thanks so much. I think it's quite unique to see the economic impact quantified. We're often seeing the eco impact. I used this much water and I did, this was my carbon footprint. So I think this gives us quite a unique perspective in terms of how we can quantify the difference that we're making. I just noted a couple, yeah, go ahead.
Just something that I meant to say. We debated the issue around turnover and showing the profit and loss figure, because traditionally in commercial environments, that's the kind of information that we know that's private confidential information. And we looked at each other and said, so what? First of all, I can tell you from having produced this spreadsheet for over 10 years now, very few people actually read the numbers. People look at it, most people's eyes glaze over at a spreadsheet like this and they don't read the numbers. Secondly, now that you know that those are the numbers, what are you going to do to change your business because you've learned about Witsieshoek's numbers? I'd put it to you, you're probably going to do nothing. Your eyes are going to go, oh, really? Is that what their turnover is? Oh, look at their occupancy. Mine's better. Mine's worse. Whatever. But it's not going to change what you do. So why not share the information? What value is there in hiding it? If anybody can learn something out of the data they've seen, then our job's done. Thanks, Lisa.
Thanks, Eleanor. I think that's one of my favorite parts about working within this organization is that it's your openness to sharing is a common characteristic among the people affiliated with fair trade tourism. I had a couple of specific questions, I think, and then I'll let other people talk. One was around defining local. I think that's something that I get often is, you know, I'm in the middle of nowhere, there's nothing local. So, I mean, fair trade has always said, you know, look at within kind of a 50-kilometer radius or as appropriate to your context. So maybe you can share with us how you defined what fell within your local procurement zone.
So it is where we go to get our groceries and we go to get our items. Witsieshoek Lodge has a 350-kilometer radius because that is where the closest town is. There's nothing closer. So 50 kilometers is meaningless. You're not even out of the Khalachadi at 50 kilometers. So we've looked at it and said, where do we have to go to as our closest port of call to get the basics? We've got to go to Uppington. Right, Uppington's local. Anything beyond Uppington practically is Joburg or Cape Town. That's national. Witsieshoek, we take local as being both the Putadi-Chaba area and up to Harrismith, because we find that that's where we have to go to. We have had a debate about pulling it back into Putadi-Chaba only, which is about a 30-kilometer radius for us, but there are a batch of service providers that we require in the hospitality industry that don't exist in Putadi-Chaba, but do exist in Harrismith. So we include those. So honestly, we just take an honest look at what is available at the closest towns, and we then ring fence for those towns, Lisa. There's no one size fits all. It's unique to each property.
Yeah, great. Thanks for that. And then just my last question, Eleanor, it relates to, you know, what you were saying about the, local supply versus local, what did you call it? Produced. Okay, produced locally or supplied, right. What have you found? I mean, obviously there's some challenges with respect to capacity, etc. I'm guessing that's a huge focus for you guys in terms of building capacity so that you can get those graphs working the right way. Are there areas where you've had more success or you find are a bigger challenge, or how have you prioritized that?
Well, we've prioritized it by through good old economics. We've told our managers that they've got to put as much business into the local area as possible, because A, they've got to reduce their fuel spend of driving further, and they've got to operate. You see, the thing about TFPD, and I think we're similar to many other fair trade properties, you know that old expression, penny pinching? We don't pinch the pennies. We make the pennies cry. We really don't spend money that we don't have to spend. Because there isn't margin to be negligent about money. And actually buying hyper-local is often the best economic decision. Why pay a supplier, a guy who, for example, can fix generators? Why pay a guy to come out of Durban when there's a guy in Putadi-Chaba who can do the work? Thanks, Lisa.
Fair enough. Can I open it up to anyone else, please? Just please open your mic and ask questions if you want, or if your experience with either of the questions I've asked, if that's different. Yeah, please just go ahead and maybe introduce yourself before you ask the question.
It's Jess here at Fat Dogs. I was just wondering, in your the community benefit categories, you've got rental to community, obviously. But we're not a community project, it's more of a business. Do you think you should, or we could put into that our licensing fees and all the other fees that we sort of have to pay, even though that's governmental level, that sort of country level rather than local level? But presumably that filters back to the country at least. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, so we tried to do that as well, because we, in our specific context, have had a lot of input from money from national governments. And we often hear government employees say in South Africa, oh, we gave the community that money. And we have a real problem with that wording, because in our context, the money wasn't given to the community. It was an investment by central government into a local area to build the economy of that area. So we tried to do what you are suggesting. And they, in fact, still our accountants still put a line at the bottom where they tell me how much we've remitted in VAT, how much we've remitted in, for us, unemployment insurance, how much we've remitted in taxes, etc. But our system of licensing and taxing, quite a lot of it is fairly opaque. For example, in fuel, we know there's a whole proportion of the expenses we're paying on fuel that remits in taxes to the legislature, and we don't always quite know what. So I'll be honest and say we gave up on that score. I would suggest in your instance that you do actually look at it, bend your minds around the subject, work out what it is. Once you know what it is, you know, these spreadsheets are not difficult to do once you've decided what you're going to put on, once you've decided what you're not going to put on, and you're able to explain it afterwards. So keep notes for yourself about why you decided to put certain data on and why you decided to exclude other data. The other thing that nobody's asked me about yet, and we have nothing on our spreadsheet about donations and charitable inputs into the area. And often that is the surrogate that is used by commercial organizations who don't have the community link. And there's no good reason not to do that. We just kept it off our specific sheet because our intention was to try and build a commercial understanding. We're working in some communities who had lived on the donor bandwagon for a long time. And we were trying to build an understanding that actually you can get off it and you can run a commercial operation. But in your instance, if you do have that side, it could be a valuable way of adding up the numbers. The other thing about these numbers is don't worry about how big that number is. If that number is not a massively huge number, it's about the trends. It's about the fact that you're recording them. It's about the fact that you're looking at local origin versus national origin on your goods. It's about the fact that you're trying to employ local as much as you can. You can only do what you can with what you have where you are. Do it.
Brilliant. Thanks very much.
If I can just add, you know, Jessica and everybody, it's a lot about the transparency as well. You know, this isn't, you know, just say what you're reporting. You know, don't couch it in something that it's not. If I can just refer back to even that example of the from the Fogo Islands, where they're economic nutrition, you know, they bundled a lot of things together. And it's, you know, maybe helpful from a communication perspective that, you know, we spend X amount in government fees and taxes and licensing. So it's helpful too for, you know, an external stakeholder to wrap their head around your business realities. And again, you don't even have to do a raw figure. Maybe you do a percentage, and then someone would say, wow, 18% of your revenue goes to government fees. You know, that makes an impact. Go ahead, Ellen.
We're looking quite seriously at doing something like that because our energy bill has just gone. Since 2016, it was sitting at 2% of our operating costs. It's now topping out at 18% of our operating costs. And we need this to tell the trade, because I'm getting bludgeoned over the head about rates at the moment. And I'm going, guys, what do I do?
Yeah, interesting to compare that. That's why we always tell people when you monitor energy consumption, you monitor per unit, not per rand or dollar, because the latter you have no control over. Yeah.
But you see, as much as we don't have a control over it, it's an absolute fundamental reality to our decision on what's happening with rates. I mean, I see Henko's joined us, and I'd love to hear Henko's input on this, because I know I have a email in my inbox, Henko, and I know it's here, and I will answer it today. But it's a harsh problem that those of us who are in remote rural areas who are having to pay both Eskom and the generator bill at the moment. It's a harsh problem that we're sitting with.
Yeah, we're about to join you there, I think.
Yeah, Eleanor, if I can answer your question. So for those who don't know me, I'm a tour operator called Tales from Africa Travel, and we serve mostly international markets. So that is a market that is coming back. What I found, Eleanor, is that you're absolutely not alone in increasing the rates. In general, a lot of the rates this year for 2023 have gone up probably between 10 and 20%. And for my clients, they are not that happy with it, but it is reality. It's what I tell them as well. The rates back home also go up with 10 to 20% in Europe. Inflation in most European countries at the moment is over 10%. So it's actually not far off to what is happening there at home. And if you then also consider that the rand is going down, or has gone down against the euro and also against the dollar, the net increase, if you do that in local currencies, and in local, I mean European or American, is probably a little bit less than what they experience at home. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. It is something that people will accept. Everybody knows that things are getting more expensive. It will have an impact on the number of visitors in the long run, I believe. But, you know, I'm originally Dutch, and I hear from my family that the discussion at this moment in Holland is to compensate people for the increase in living costs, and they're talking about wage increases of 10 to 11%. So if you compare that to what we increase our wage and the differing rent rates, they're actually not much more expensive off than they are now. So we need to survive. You know, so as an industry, we need to be sustainable, and sustainable also means economically sustainable. And we can't do that if we keep hanging on to old rates and don't want to pass on the increases. If one thing COVID has taught me, is that you need to build up reserves, so you need to be able to survive. That's my 2 cents.
Wonderful. Thank you, Henko. Thank you.
So, Eleanor, I'm looking forward to new increased rates from you.
Yes.
Anyone have any other questions or comments?
Yeah, I have one. It's sideways related because you show the figures. How do the local communities react to the figures? Are they happy with the results?
So, Henko, like all things, it depends on the individual, and it depends on what the individual is driving at. At Witsieshoek, we had a presentation to both the community owners, the government stakeholders, and the staff members on the 1st of December now, saying, you know, this is what we presented. You've been seeing these figures for 12 years, but this is how we presented them, and this is how it ran out, and this is how the award happens. And I found the response underwhelming in the sense of interrogation of the data. I did not hear the questions that I would have liked to have heard. That, I think, is largely on us, because I think the data currently is, we have chosen a path of keeping a strong traditional commercial focus in the way we operate, because we are trying to prove that communities do not need to be treated like they're stupid. They do not need to be treated in any way differently from normal commercial owners of an asset. So in general, I think the response was not as nuanced as I would have liked it. However, I also acknowledge we've just come out of 2 years of watching the government of our country give us legislation via graphics that get tweeted during a president's speech. We have, as a country, learned to read the graphics to understand the big story. And I'm taking a personal responsibility that says I've got to take that very accurate and left-brained type of information and convert it into something that is more graphic. One of the huge problems with a stable tourism business is that we are often in no position to increase the number of employees. You get to a point in a tourism business where you've got the right number of employees for that business, and that's it. Coast Lodge, for instance, we can't bring another single person on site because we've only got X number of beds in the staff accommodation. So simply can never change the number of staff members. Now, in a country where the big push is, well, how many people are you employing? You're on a hiding to nothing there in terms of it. So back to your question about how is the information is accepted. The information's accepted a little bit more reluctantly than I would like it to be, but it certainly is accepted. And there was quite a party at Witsieshoek last Thursday, let's put it that way. The Morena Montwedi Mota, the king of the Bakloko, who came up to accept the award on behalf of the community, he stood outside and we used on the cover a photograph of him and Glyn sitting on a bench looking at the snow a year ago. And he's a tiny little figure in the corner of the photograph with a huge picture of the Sentinel Peak. And I said to him, Morena, I hope you don't feel offended that you're such a small part of the picture. And he looked at me and he said, my dear, we are just small. It is the world that is so big. So there's deeply sophisticated understanding. It really depends on what you as the individual need as to what you want to understand. Because I see the numbers, I see that there's no profit line. I understand why I, at a personal level, am not back on my full salary and all those horrible things. And I get damn grumpy because I've got my grocery bill at the end of the week. But I know what the figures are, and therefore I can deal with the reality. Thanks, Henko.
Sorry, Lizanne, did you have a question you wanted to ask as well? Oh, you're muted, Lizanne.
Sorry. It's a bit of a question from the side, Eleanor, and I think it's not from an establishment point of view, but obviously from our point of view as a marketing agency. For me, everything that you're talking about is important as well. And I remember a long time ago, Lisa, I think it was 15 years back, you helped me with our establishment, the Farm Stay in series. And, then you can actually bring in the community and see where the contributions are going. But my question actually is, Eleanor, maybe from your point of view, suggestions on how to measure the impact. Because in my view, I think we started this company saying, okay, we support people like you, and that's our contribution. That's how we make sure the right people get the right guests, and we grow the community through you guys. And from my own point of view, I'm sometimes sitting at the end of the year like now, thinking, okay, we're employing 6 people, that counts, it's job creation. We're sending lots of traffic and bookings to people, ecotourism businesses that are really making a difference out there. But apart from that, I'm thinking, okay, we do make donations to the Cape Leopard Fund and we plant forests in Kenya. Am I missing something? Is that what we can do? From your point of view, is there another way to maybe look at it or plan for the future for a more direct impact? Or is that kind of pretty much what we can do?
Eleanor, do you want to take that, and then I'll add my 2 bits?
Yeah. So at a gut level, I having had the privilege of working with you as well pre-COVID, you guys are absolutely freaking fabulous, and I don't think you should be looking at charting economic impact like we do, because you're in a different space. The value you deliver into us as a broader ecosystem of a community is a different value. It's about the number of times you push a post out that speaks the right message. It's the number of people you influence. It's the number of times that you have, because we can only be successful if we get the right kind of guest in.
Exactly, yeah.
At the end of the day. And that's the value you deliver into the ecosystem. Don't get caught up in this trying to economic impact stuff. I don't think it's that important. I think you could blow our socks off with numbers about how many people do you talk to, how many good messages did you put out there. It's not about it, because one day we'll be able to work out what every one of your messages is delivered. I mean, we could try and do it. I just think you start getting too clever. That's the thing about where our numbers come from. Our numbers come out of the audited financial statements. They come out of stuff we have to do at a fiduciary level for this country anyway. We don't make up extra numbers. We just take the numbers that we have. You've got numbers already in terms of what you're presenting to your clients. Think about which of those numbers are good numbers and roll them up, and they'll be unbelievable. There'll be millions and trillions in your numbers.
Yeah, okay. Cool, thank you. That helps.
Yeah, if I can just add, and it's kind of a nice segue into what I wanted to wrap up with today is, I think we kind of overcomplicate the impact monitoring. And I think we need to focus on, we need to be transparent, but also focus on where you're having an impact and where you're focusing your energies. So yeah, with you, Lizanne, I mean, I think it's a very clear way that you're having an incredible impact in the sector. So don't undersell that, and maybe, create your own impact indicators in terms of your area of expertise. You don't have to report against the same thing that everybody else is reporting on. So I don't know, that's my opinion on that. And yeah, just to sort of a heads up from Fair Trade side, we also, I'm working from a virtual office. Am I going to report for the organization on how much water we use? No, probably not. So Fair Trade's actually recently been asked to join a global initiative called the Tourism Impact Alliance, which is being driven by the GSTC and TourCert. And it's funded by SECO, the Swiss government. And it's looking at a couple of different things, but the reason I'm participating as Fair Trade Tourism is there are a number of certification bodies looking at how we can quantify the impact of certification. The cynic in me is all over the place, but I'm not sure how we'll do that, but I'm participating to see if we can come away with something that will help us communicate impact more effectively. I see we're reaching sort of the end of our time, and I'd like to try and respect that, but I really want to make, if anyone has a question burning, please throw it out there. Eleanor, I really want to thank you for not only your time, but also TFPD's transparency in terms of, sharing what you do, and also doing it so humbly. I think when we're humble about what we do, it makes it so much more, I'll use the word again, accessible for other people. Sometimes when we see the gloss and the glitz, we get freaked out that we can't do it. So I really appreciate your approach. And so, yeah, thanks for being here with us today.
Thank you.
So I think I'll close off for the day and wish you all a good one. And yeah, I'll be in touch again soon. And there I see Eleanor has shared her email address if anyone wants to reach out to her directly. So eleanor@tfpd.co.za. Okay, thanks a lot. Have a great day. Bye-bye.